All right, this is Rewired. I'm Jeff Cook.
I'm Katie Whitlock.
Hey, we're talking about sixes today, Katie.
Yay!
Katie and I have a fantastic theory about 3 6s and 9s building on the work that we're looking through. Joey Schewee's new book, When Working Together Doesn't Work. She elevates an idea called processing center. Katie and I have spent lots of time bantering about this offline and trying to get our head around that. And if you would like to hear that conversation, skip to the end, which we are going to post after we do appropriate justice to talking about the sixes today. Anything on sixes before we jump into this?
So what really happened is we started this podcast, we started recording, we tried to talk about sixes, and then we got into literally an hour-long theory debate. Or not debate, but banter. And so what's really going to happen is that we're going to cut that and we're going to put it on the end of this episode. We're going to do sixes now. And then if you want to listen to the theory, stick around. But if you start listening to the theory and you feel like, hey, it sounds like this came first. It did come first. We just got done with it. But we didn't want to make people sit through an hour and 15 minutes of that before they got to the sixes. So we're going to do sixes first and then we'll put that at the end. So
if you stick around, you will hear all about my new back tattoo as well. It's
near the end too, so it'll be
near the end. You got to hold out for
that's
the whole
the finishing prize.
We are talking about Shewee's concept of processing center. We're going to really elevate. We touched on this obviously with threes. We touched on this in terms of the intro. I think we're going to spend quite a bit more time on it with the sixes as the sixes move out of the thinking center into the feeling center to acquire something that they want there in order to fulfill their motive. This is what Schewee calls processing center, that there's a process taking place in that move, that the six gains something that's not in their primary center. So I'm going to read some of her quotes down. We're going to comment. It's going to be good. This chapter starts. Sixes are presented in the final chapter for a reason. As you've read up to this point, the types who misidentify themselves most are sixes, threes, and nines in that order. It's no surprise that the primary types would be the most prone to mistyping. Being wired to shift away from your home base to process with a preferred center because you do not inherently trust your dominant center leads to very real imposter syndrome. She's going to go on to note that since the six is shifting out of thinking, distrusting their thinking, they're going to outsource a lot of their thinking to their relationships in order to get what they desire. Any introductory thoughts on sixes here?
I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but I'll say it. With 8 threes and 1s, we had this line. We said that threes. That's not how I want to say that. With 8 threes and 1s, we set up this idea that all of these numbers are using the same tools of action, but threes are using them in service of a different goal, which is the goal that they got from their home base, the heart center of making people like me, right? Or being seen or image crafting or whatever you want to say. 8s and 1s are using action tools in service of their home base, which is action. So, and the little quip we had to determine kind of if you were in that 8-1 space versus the 3 space is, do the ends justify the means? Does it matter how you do something just as much as it matters what you do? Or if you're a 3, what's really going to be important is what we do. I don't really care how we do it, or I don't have as high of a standard as 8 and 1s do for doing something. All I'm doing is doing this thing so that I can bring it back home and say, did that make you like me? Right? Mm. And I imagine we'll see something similar with sixes here, because 2, 6s, and 4s, they're all using feeling tools, but sixes are using feeling in service of security. They are using feeling tools to gain security, whereas 2s and 4s are using feeling tools in service of image crafting, right? And do you see me? Do you like me? Have I done enough? That stuff, right? And I think that's going to show up in our conversation of doubt. Sixes have a lot of doubt around relationships. But I'd like to focus on that too. Like how it makes sixes look different to use these same tools, but they're bringing them home to a different place, right? So what does that mean?
Love this idea that they're going somewhere else in service of a different goal. I think I want to spin it through, this may be a shadow side, but elevating the underlying feeling for me really helps here. That in order to meet their underlying feeling, the threes meet their shame, the sixes meet their anxiety, the nines meet their anger and need for control. They're going to go somewhere else to gain something and bring it back home. In our conversation to come, Kay elevated this as like they're operating in this other center. Mm-hmm. It's not their primary center, but they're going into that center in order to operate. There's a mining, there's a grabbing something there and then taking it back to meet that primary need that they have. But of course it's different. So for the ones in the eights, they want to get the control, but they're staying in that body center. The three is coming in to the doing center, the body center, taking what they've accomplished, taking what they've done, bringing it back home, looking for the recognition, acclaim, attention, etc. that is desired. So too the six, grabbing the relational. What would it be? They're grabbing what they need most from relationships to still their anxiety, to get some backing.
Yeah.
There can be an outsourcing of trust that can happen. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on here, I suppose. We'll talk quite a bit. There's the move for the six is actually pretty, it's not simple. There's a lot going on.
Okay. Oh, I have it. So
yeah,
this is from Joey, but I've just now connected this. I think the difference that we're going to see between sixes and then twos and fours is that sixes need people and twos and fours want someone. So sixes know that there is safety in numbers. And so what they're going to do is they're going to surround themselves with lots of relationships. They're going to want to be aware of many different relationships, right? All these things. Twos and fours, all they really need is someone in front of them to make a connection with, right? And does that person see me? Whereas sixes are more of a, this will get a little different if we were talking about subtypes too, like maybe
that's
a
what
sexual
I was hearing.
six.
I was going to ask you about that.
I don't know what I would say about that, but I don't know. So maybe this theory isn't well baked, but I think there is something to be said there. I think there is something to be said there, and that's all I'll say.
So I know that we talked about this at length when we did our subtype deep dive, our instincts deep dive, which you can find. It's on the Around the Circle podcast like 5 summers ago.
Perfect.
But I think it's important to note that a six may be seeking to gain their sense of security from a single relationship. If they're sexual, it will primarily focus on an individual or one-on-one bonding experiences. For a social six, it will be much more communal in nature. Self-pres is real interesting on these fronts because the primary need of the self-pres person is to look at themselves before looking at others. But the self-pres six will still be going into the heart center to get what they want. But at some level, human beings are much more like an asset, similar to fives on this front. But it's like, can I establish the connections in order to ensure that I have security? I'm not sure how that's different across those as I'm saying it, but I know that is something we worked on.
Would love to hear from sexual sixes, because here's my question. I don't know a lot about subtypes, and it's just because I haven't dealt with them a lot. Mm-hmm. But a sexual six, are you really only worried about one person, or do you just want a really intense relationship with whoever's in front of you, but you do still want multiple relationships over, like, in your life, you know?
To answer for it, it's the latter. It's when engaging others, it's very intense. It's just intense, and it's much more that energy, the relational energy and the avenues for connection are just easiest when I'm just talking to this person one-on-one. At least that's how I experience that as a dominant instinct.
The other thing I'll bring up here is that the other thing that Joey points out in this book is that 2s and 4s are the only numbers that require someone else to get their motivation met. So 2s, I need to be needed. That requires somebody else. And 4s, I need to be seen, or whatever she says their motivation is in here. That requires another person to see you, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe there's something there too. Like 6s are just using the people in service of this other goal over here. 2s and 4s, the person is providing the end goal. Like the person is the end goal, right?
Yeah.
Again, maybe I'm having a hard time because this feeling center stuff is hard for me as a 3. But anyway, something to be said.
The connection is what's most desired.
Yeah, and then that's it.
Yeah, one's own sense of worth and value is grounded there. Again, the underlying feeling pops for me there in terms of what is the underlying feeling you're seeking to solve. For the 2 and the 4, their sense of valuelessness is appeased through others giving them the attention that meets that sense of underlying shame.
The other thing that I experience in 6s, and this is really, really nuanced, because 6s do want people to like them, right? Mm-hmm. But if you actually watch a 6, not how a 6 talks about themselves, but if you actually watch a 6, there are many times where a 6, they're using a relationship for information, but they don't actually need that person to like validate who they are as a person, right? So we talk about 6s have this kind of outlook of, are you out to get me, right? And if your end goal is connection, then you can't start there. You know what I mean? Are you out to get me? And I have seen 6s when it really, really comes down to the wire, they'll like drill into people to get an answer, right? And they'll kind of sacrifice this kind of, what do you think of me, to get that security from that person, right? Because they're not wanting the relationship with the person, they're wanting the security with the person. And so drilling into, okay, that was a lot better in my head. Do you hear something there?
I do. One of the things that came up in a conversation on the morning show is randomly, like what sort of compliments do you enjoy most? They all expose type of all things. And the thing that Kristen brought up as a 6 was that she wants other people to in compliments, the only compliment she really wants is somebody to tell her that she's smart. And there's something there in terms of saying, like, the thing that I imagine a 6 can be most, quote unquote, like insecure about would be whether or not they have their thinking in the right spaces. Yeah. So I get some of that there. It's it's not always I'm outsourcing all my needs for security to the group, although that can be part of it. It also can be the case that just getting stability from others noting you have what it takes, kid, can be really valuable. But that it's still a relational. This is where the questions that 6s bring up, looking for answers, can be a huge part of how they are in the world. Yeah. I'm part of the tribe. I'm asking the questions. I'm assessing my own thinking based on other people's answers. That seems to me a really worthwhile way to be in the world.
I experience 6s as so much more intense than 2s and 4s. And everybody wants to say 4s are really intense. And again, maybe a subtype thing. But I don't really experience 4s as intense. I do experience them as fluctuating and big ups, big downs. I experience them as depthy. Mm-hmm. But 6s have this like underlying sense of danger that can make their interactions with you kind of tinged with this intensity of like, we need to figure this out, right? Like we need to work together. We need to figure this out. And the tools we're using are relational. We're going to do it together. We're going to uncover what's here, all the things. But like when I am in an interaction with a 6 that I don't know very well, but I do know they're a 6, like that is what I experience from them, is this kind of pointed uncovering and like control of things.
One of the quotes I want to get to is the 6s. We often talk about 4s and 8s being the ones who push for authenticity, but 6s are absolutely right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I hear as you're talking, is that 4s and 6s in particular are, well, they're solving problems by, shutting down their thinking, really pushing for relational exposure.
Yeah.
And that's a problem solving strategy.
Yes. And
so go ahead.
No, you go.
I love the idea that these are all intense numbers for different reasons.
Yeah.
The 2s are kind of, in my experience, 2s can enter your space with kind of that I'm here energy.
Yeah, for sure. That is true.
Asking for an invitation, can you invite me in to do the things? 4s, I would want to bring up the dramatic elements of 4s, but that's how attention seeking works for the 4.
Yeah,
is I'm going to be dramatic to try and pull you in.
Yeah, that's like 4s. It's, if you want to use the word intensity, but it's all intensity like within themselves. 6s, it feels like the intensity is like at me.
Yes.
Like pointed at me. The intensity is coming towards me.
It's exactly that. That's perfectly said. And these are all stereotypes.
These are,
so I don't mean to over
everything I'm saying. I'm like thinking of a 6 I know where like that doesn't really apply, but that's just the general story with 6s anyway.
No, but it can come that way.
Yeah.
That would be that problem solving. It's like because problem solving for the 4, 6, 8 is, I want to see if you see the world the way I do.
Yeah.
I'm pushing you some to see if you are trustworthy, reliable, authentic, and see the world the way that I do.
Yeah.
That's how I actually solve problems. And so that's why you get that from the 6.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hitting you with questions, because questions are kind of a radar for exposure. Like, what will this person say? Mm-hmm. Are they reliable? Are they trustworthy? Mm-hmm. Are they thoughtful? Mm-hmm. Are they able to see the problem the way I see it?
The only other thing I wanted to bring up before we move on is you talked about authenticity. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring up the difference between authenticity and honesty.
Yeah.
Which looks so similar. Again, in real life, that's like almost always the same thing. But authenticity is a little more about who you are, staying true to who you are, which is very 4, right? And honesty, I think authenticity is included in honesty as well. But what 6s really want is the truth, right?
Yeah.
4s want to be themselves and for you to be yourself. And 6s want the truth, right? A lot of times that includes the truth of who you are, but it's not like 4s. There's this sense of like image, and like I hear the shame and like the authenticity and like being who you are and all the stuff. And there's just this like sense of ego and image that I don't get in the honesty that 6s are trying to like uncover. You know what I mean? I don't, maybe that doesn't make sense to anyone else. The difference in those two things, but
I hear it as both of them in different ways are pushing for what's real.
Yeah.
What's real can be trusted. For the 4, that it's going to be what's real emotionally, and for the 6, it's going to be different. It's going to be what's real. I don't want to say physically, because I don't know that that's it.
It's like it's like it's more than just being authentic. Like they want everything to me.
Is there a head center? Like going back, you're pushing into your relational space to grab something. You bring it back.
Well, it's the certainty. They're trying to fight the uncertainty that they feel. Yeah. All head types would agree that the world is inherently uncertain, and they all have a different way to combat that. Sixes try to turn the uncertain manner of the world into certainty. They try to make everything certain. They try to uncover everything so that nothing is uncertain. So maybe it's that.
And wouldn't it be the case that that would be relational?
Yeah.
In the same way that threes are pivoting to that doing center to get the thing to come back into the heart. Do you see me?
Yeah.
Am I getting the attention I desire? So too, the six is going into that relational space, mining, grabbing the stuff, coming back. Do I feel certain now?
Has this made the world more certain for me?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what they're doing.
And they're doing it primarily through relationships.
Yeah. And they get the information from other people and how other people are acting and what other people say and how they're holding themselves in the room. And then they're bringing that's why sixes call themselves intuitive. Because it's that they're looking out at other people and then they're bringing that back into the head and they're saying, does this solve any of my questions or my fears about the world? Right.
It's going to bring up some questions for me. Like, mostly, that feels like a strategy for getting your motive fulfilled. The 3 goes into action. The 6 goes into relationships. Come back, assess. So many times people, rightly or wrongly, I don't actually know, may actually judge that move. Do you really need to get your value based on your accomplishments? Do you really need to get your value or do you really need to get your insights from other people? Can't you just trust yourself? You see where I'm going there?
Yeah, I do. Like the other people in your center might not understand why you need to leave the center. Right? I imagine 5s and 7s look at 6s and are like, can't you just do that yourself? Right? Right?
Yeah, right.
2s and 4s, can't you just connect? Can't you just actually talk to people? Right? When they look at 3s, you're being fake.
I want to think on that more.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's an unhealthy move. I think that's a natural move.
Yeah, I don't think, has anybody said this is an unhealthy move?
Yes. Mostly, so the idea that a strong encouragement, I think, for a lot of 6s is that they need to trust their own judgment.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Yes.
Would that not be cutting off that move? Then?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, it's probably that thing of like, you're never going to not be relational. But maybe 6s also do this thing where they get all that information and they bring it back and they still don't know what to think about it. Right?
Sure, right.
So maybe that level of like, you have the information, you've done the work, just do it. There are always going to be some things that are uncertain, right?
Now
So maybe
yourself.
in that instance, just chill, right? But I agree with you. It's probably unfair. We would never ask a 3. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
But stop achieving. But certainly 6s get the brunt of that. Absolutely. You just need to stand on your own. Well, okay, that's cutting off my entire move.
Is it a healthy, do you think it's healthy for me to say, Katie, you need to accomplish some stuff in a vacuum and really be satisfied by that?
Yeah, but that's really what you're talking about is my heart center motivation. You're not talking about not accomplishing. You're not telling me to stop going to the doing center.
Oh, you're right.
You're telling me to come back and stop assessing through my heart.
Yes. It would be like saying to the 6, don't go into the relational center if you just trust yourself by yourself. So it would be for the 3, it would be, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Just know and understand
Just rest.
your value.
Which people do say. I mean, that is the growth path for a 3. You don't need to do anything. Just trust your own value. But like, okay, that's 5 million miles down the road when I start doing Enneagram work, like that's like the last thing that a 3, 6, or 9 could get to.
Does that feel like the healthy encouragement for you?
Well, I think if someone's like, you should never do anything for the rest of your life, well, that's just like you shouldn't tell, like doing is a third of life, right? I think it's absolutely healthy to say, you should learn how to do without needing people's opinions about it. You know? But if your advice for a 3 is just stop doing, well, why would you tell anyone else to just stop doing? Like, it's like, why? You just have to do it for the right reasons.
There's something there. I don't know what it would be for 9s. How would that work for
9s, people would say, just do it. Why can't you, again, kind of trust yourself, but like, why can't you just do it? Why can't you just know what needs to be done? Just do the thing.
Yeah, just engage.
Just do the thing in the order it needs to be done and at the time it needs to be done. Just do it.
Yeah.
And 9s are like, I don't even know what that means.
No, that actually is bringing up how this would work for me. If we said something to the effect of 3s, 6s, and 9s are all just uncomfortable in their center, as we've said. What you might really be saying is, look, why don't you get comfortable in your center?
Yeah.
Not a bad thing to pivot out. But that would be, I suppose that's working on your repressed center, isn't it?
That's just working. It's just, that actually is exactly what it is. We tell everybody to work on your repressed center. It just so happens that for 3, 6, and 9s, it's also your home base.
Yes.
So there's going to be some added complexity to getting comfortable with your repressed center.
There you go. Okay. That's helpful. Shewee's word on authenticity in 6s. She says 6s carry all of their dominant thinking values, information, data, analysis with them to process with feeling. Thus, 6s feel strongly about the integrity and free flow of information. 6s are the only type who consistently need to know the why before they can move forward with a task. Without Enneagram familiarity, the invariable delay that exists for 6s between receiving information and deciding to act can be confusing, if not frustrating. The Enneagram reveals the imperative stop that 6s must. The Enneagram reveals the imperative stop that 6s make to process information with feeling and their uniquely subjective view of the task in question. You hear anything there?
I like that she says uncovering information. And I think that's what I was trying to get at with authenticity versus honesty. And she does use the word authenticity here, but I would use the word honesty. 4s want to be themselves. 6s want to uncover information. And a lot of times that is relational information. So it looks like authenticity, right? Or it is authenticity a lot of the time. But it's broader than that. It can also be more than that, right? What's your relationship with this person, right? What do you think about this? What do you think about the new CEO, right? How do you think we should do this? That's more than authenticity, right? That's broader than that. So that's what I heard there.
I think that's solid. I think I already said what I wanted to about how similar that is to 4s and 8s. But the pushing others with action relationally works across those 3 types for me. Bang. Sorry. Last quote for me on 6s is on 165. When you value information and socializing is your process, oversharing is inevitable.
Yeah, I underline that too.
She unpacks this and says 6s connect with others through the sharing of personal information. They feel close to the people who matter to them when they know the details of what's happening in their lives on a regular basis. When a 6 asks you how you're doing, they want as much detail as you're willing to provide, and they offer plenty in return and superfluous context. 6s don't delineate between personal and professional relationships when it comes to exchanging information, which can sometimes catch coworkers off guard. She closes, sixes are known as the loyalist, the devil's advocate, the true team player, prioritizing people through a shift to process with feeling. Here's the shift. Brings true team player to the foreground because community meets a six's need to feel secure. There it is. They are strong advocates for their teams and do not make decisions without ample consideration for individuals and the team as a whole. We could probably talk about the team as a whole in a second, but all I read there is how their stance is really functioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's very external and it comes across very relational in terms of it's not just verbal processing, but oversharing of personal information. What do you see there?
I think I see a little bit of what I was talking about earlier with the sixes need people and fours need a person. And maybe twos as well. Although twos we think of as very social. But like if sixes need to make a decision and they're not in like super counterphobic mode, like they're going to consult more than one person. Mm-hmm. Or maybe one person, but they're also going to think about what does the institution want from me, right? What does my boss want from me? What does this expect? What do the rules say? So at least multiple sources, I'll say, right? And that multiple lines into people in service of security back in my home base is what I see there, right?
Yep.
Twos and fours can get. It's hard to feel secure with one data point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can feel needed by one data point and you can feel seen by one data point. It is very hard to feel secure with one data point, with one person.
Yeah. Both in terms of feedback, but also in terms of, will this person help me if things break?
Yeah.
That's a good like triad right there in terms of body, mind, and heart.
What?
I need this person's body. I need them to do something for me if something breaks. I need this person's thinking because I want to check my own thinking against their thought. And I do that in a relational context. And I invest in the relationships of people who have merit, who are trustworthy, who I've vetted.
Yeah.
It's just a holistic way of finding security.
Mm-hmm. Everything that another person can offer me.
Yeah. What I was hearing as you were talking was the oversharing for a 2 has a different target than the oversharing for a 6.
Mm-hmm.
The oversharing for the 2 is for attention if they overshare.
Mm-hmm.
If they get into that gear where they start talking about themselves, it's
to be
the
seen.
connection. The connection's the point.
Yeah.
And the value me is the point. Not for the 6. The oversharing at some levels is about anxiety and about connection and about all the things. You can come in. The Kelly is home.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Katie.
And
She
the other
said
thing, the other thing I'll say there is if you do not return the oversharing.
Pants, and I had to come home and change it. Now I'm going back to work.
Sorry.
The other thing I'll say there, if you don't return the overshare, right? So if a 2 overshares to you and a 6 overshares to you and you don't return it, the 6 is going to feel like you don't trust them enough, right? And
Okay,
a
yeah.
2, again, in real life, it might feel the same, but a 2 is going to worry that they're not like good enough for you to want to share with them. They haven't proven themselves enough, right? So 2 will try to prove themselves, and a 6 will try, well, again, to prove themselves trustworthy, though. That like,
Right.
you know, that
both of them earning.
Right. Both of them earning, but kind of in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way though.
Yeah. 2s will try to show you their heart a little more so that you know that it's, you know what I mean? And 6s will try to show you their security, their trustworthiness, right? Basically.
I've done all the 6s. I've done all the things that will ensure that we're safe moving forward.
Yeah.
And the 2 is I've done all the things to ensure that you have everything you need because I love you and care about you and I'm here. I would be curious. So we've kind of bantered around the edges of instincts. I know exactly what this feels like in a one-on-one context. What does this look like communally? You know, the two is here to serve everyone. What do they want? Like if the two or the six starts oversharing in a larger group, does that happen?
Yeah, so think about if a six is I can answer this with sixes. Think about if a six is your boss. What's going to happen is that they're going to want everyone to think the same way. And so they will overshare information because to a six, if you're not on my train of thought, well, then you must not know enough, right? So let me keep sharing so that we can all get on the same train, right? So sixes want collective thought. Twos... This is what I'm saying. I mean, like, technically twos can be in front of a crowd, but twos are worried about, like, each individual person's relationship with them. Like, if two is in a crowd of 5 people, I mean, does that track with sixes there, too?
Does it work for twos? Because we talked about the circle of vulnerability at one point, which has pinged for me for twos, fives, and eights. Like, so in a family dynamic, in like a nuclear family, does the two have a relationship with the 4 or 5 who they can be connected to all at once as opposed to the one-on-one? Or does that just not work?
I want to say that my mom has like an individual relationship with each of us. She doesn't have a relationship like to the family. I mean, she's like our mom, but you know what I mean? Like each individual relationship is very important to her. She does not want the general consensus of a relationship or the general feeling of being generally connected to the family. She wants to know that she is good with each and every individual person. But a 6, I don't know. I mean, I imagine a 6 would feel the same way because an individual person can break, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So a 6 is going to want to find out the weakest link, right? And know where they stand with every person. So I don't know if that really tracks like that.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know.
Of all things, the other oversharer is going to be me, and I'm doing it for
you're all verbal processors.
like a similar way. But I think I'm really comfortable verbally processing and oversharing in public spheres. Mostly because I've done the work to say, well, I'm not at fault, so I'm just fine. There
you go. Yeah, right. Well, so, and go ahead.
Yeah. But it's in service to probably my motive moving things forward. Oversharing can be a way that I do a check on myself and seek to pull people into action. That's actually
you overshare how you're going to do something. As your business partner?
Yes.
That's what you you don't overshare relationally. You overshare with an action emphasis. So you tell, I'm not saying this negatively. I'm just in the context of the conversation. No? You tell me too much about how you're going to do things, right? I don't care, right?
Yep.
I do like Joey it, but that is what you're doing. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's twofold there. Well, one, notice the center.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the center is super different. 2s and 6s are over in that relational center.
What was my second? Yeah. Joey notes that as well. It's where 1s, 2s, and 6s. This is where we are doing our assessment. Mm-hmm. That external processing is taking place in those spaces. You want to float the conclusion for our philosophical banner that we'll post?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. Dear listener, at some point, Kay and I will do the deep dive into affect groups, but we haven't really yet. But in psychological theory, the triad of those who are rejection types, frustration types, in detachment types or attachment types has just a ton of literature on it. Now, those who were in the San Francisco school, Enneagram school, David Daniels, Helen Palmer, and the rest, really grabbed hold of that object relation theory material, brought it into Enneagram. And when they teach Enneagram, that's where they really start. They do the centers to at some level, but they really, really love affect groups. They say so much about relationships. And so Helen Palmer's big book, her Enneagram and Work and Love and Work, something like that, just all about the connections. Now, here's the thing. One of the things that Katie and I have been bantering around when it comes to 3, 6s, and 9s is that they feel uncomfortable in their center, and so they're moving to their processing center in Joey's language. And the question becomes why? Why are you not liking your primary center?
Well, and like the heart triad, especially 2s and 4s also don't like the heart. You know what I mean? Like they're also uncomfortable with shame. 5s and 7s don't like fear. You know,
but they don't leave.
So why do 3s and 6s leave? Right?
Yeah. Why does the 6 leave the head center to find the solution to their anxiety somewhere else? Why does the 3 leave the heart center to find the solution for their sense of shame somewhere else? Why does the 9 leave the body center, feel uncomfortable in their body, in order to go into the head center, in order to find something that will make them feel better? Notice, when it comes to affect groups, the 3, 6s, and 9s are the detachment triad. And what we might say is that's how 3, 6s, and 9s attach to the relationships that they want, and they will detach from the relationships that they want. 3s attach to those who give them that sense of value that they crave. 6s attached to those who give them the sense of security they crave. 9s attached to those who give them the sense of calm and peace that they crave. That's a primary, and that's what they offer. 3s offer a sense of communal success. 6s offer a sense of communal safety. 9s offer, as their relational gift, a sense of communal peace. That attachment and detachment is just core for 3, 6s, and 9s. And notice, the movement out of their center is a detachment. And that's why they're leaving their center. They're detaching from their center because that's actually how they are in the world. That would be their affect.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting.
Yeah, me too.
It still works.
If you also find that interesting, stick around for the next hour. We'll talk about it.
You can hear the 1 hour wind up to us getting there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we're saying there though? Like when you were saying, I love your phrasing that they're going to a different center, but it's in service of a different goal than that center's goal. It's like I'm detaching, the 3, 6, 9 are detaching from the primary center to find the service, to find the solution to their underlying feeling somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's anything else that needs to be said. It's so clean in my head now.
Yeah, done. Because that's how they do everything, right?
What really gets elevated there for me is that this is what the rest of us need to understand about the 3, 6, 9's relationship to their underlying feeling, or to their repressed center. Their repressed center makes them feel uncomfortable. That's not true of everyone else, I don't think.
I think it is true, but I think it's true in a different way.
Like the thinking center doesn't make me uncomfortable.
I think it does.
Oh.
Feeling makes 7 and 8 uncomfortable. We can say that.
Okay, well, maybe that is true. You want to have another hour-long conversation about that? Well, you need to do business with that. That is something I just want to return to at some point, is like each of the types relationship to each of their centers, and like, what does that look like, feel like? what the language can be put there. I think that's really helpful. Anyway, that's what I got on sixes. Last word on sixes?
No, I think that's great.
Bang. Well, hey, as was said, if you have thoughts on this, go to aroundthecircle.org. We would love for you to comment on this particular episode. We can see your thoughts about all these things, about repressed centers, about processing center, your thoughts on the book. We would love to hear it. And you can sign up there for all of the events that we have online. We have online workshops and reading groups and lots of extra videos and maybe some college classes that are videotaped. And I mean, what else do you really need, Katie?
Right, nothing. Not a house, not food. Just come to aroundthecircle.org. We got you.
This is fundamental. Maslow's hierarchy is fulfilled.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I got. Hey, guess what?
What?
You're the best.
You are.
All right, friends, this podcast has an appendice, a postscript, a tag on, dare we say.
Dare we say.
Good morning. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Occasionally you get thoughts at random times. You're on a run, you're in the shower, you're setting up for work, and the epiphany hits that needs to be spoken through. And you send random texts of theory to your partner, and they say, holy crap, you're exactly right. We should probably talk about that. And here we are.
And here we are. Here we are.
Katie's doing much better business on this front than I am and challenging my thoughts as it stands. I wanted to set this up. I have been talking about 3, 6s, and 9s movement as a movement for assessment. I want to bail that language, and we're going to make a case. Holy crap. We're going to make a case for Joey Schewee's language actually being where we should probably land after reconsidering the idea of processing. So after all of this discussion, we're going to take up processing and seek to define it in a different kind of way that really makes sense for us of what's taking place. So as my setup, we're bailing assessment, going with processing. What did you see here?
So this came up in my brain yesterday. Like you said, I was at work because when we recorded the first part of this podcast a few days ago, I was like, I don't like assessment. And we went through all of that, blah, blah, blah. And then I also had this line where I was like, I also don't like processing, but I don't remember why I don't like processing. Because I knew that we had kind of talked about processing, but I couldn't remember the reasons why we didn't like it. And so I was at work yesterday and I was thinking, I was like, why didn't I like processing? And so I looked up the definition of what it means to process. And it actually was it actually fit this pretty well. And so I had a moment where I was like, shoot. Processing might work.
We should return.
We should return to
this.
We should return to this. So anyway, I sent it to you. And what really happened is, we'll get into this, but I think there's kind of 2 different definitions of processing. And one of them really works for what Joey's talking about. And one of them doesn't. And I was originally thinking of the second one. But if she's considering the first definition, which I imagine she is, then I will sign up to use the word processing center. So that's what was going on in my head. I had a feeling about it and I couldn't remember why I felt that way. And I looked it up and it turns out I was wrong. So.
I'll tell you where my misstep is I was thinking about processing exclusively in mental ways. You process something mentally.
To make sense of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a process taking place. What we've been bantering about offline is that you can have a physical process. There could be, like, you can imagine a processing plant, which converts one thing into another. So the processing plant takes milk and it turns it into cheese. That's a physical process.
Yeah.
Or there might be an emotional processing. I really need to do business with this feeling. I don't know what it is yet. I need to really dive into it, both for myself and perhaps I need to emotionally process with others so that I can get back to where I want to be. So 3 different ways that one might process, and we could take those in turn starting with the sixes, notice the emotional processing with the six. It's that, as we've been kind of talking about, sixes are detaching from the head center. It's an uncomfortable space. The feelings of anxiety emerge. What do you do with this anxiety? Sixes detach from that center and their anxiety, pivoting into an emotional space, into their heart center. And that's where they're going to do the business. They're going to process their anxiety in an emotional space that relies on connections with other people, with what other people say, and seeking to find some stability in the center that isn't about stability, so that they can grab hold of something there and return back to the head center, having done the emotional processing that they hope will satisfy their need to overcome their anxiety. That's what I see going on there.
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
No, I think that's good. That goes off of so I said there's two definitions of processing, and you just use the first one, which is the one that does make me sign up for Joey. So I want to read it. This is the Google definition that I looked up last night, where that made me go, oh. So it says, I just looked up process definition, and it says, a process is a structured series of actions, steps, or changes directed toward a specific intended result. And so earlier in this podcast, I said I want a word that talks about, it's basically like the steps you're doing or the tools you're using to get back to your original intended result, basically, was the word I wanted. And turns out processing center is pretty good. It works for that. And I was going off of what you said. I think my own, I do still have one little tiny problem with processing center, and it is that you have to explain that that's the definition you're going off of. Because I do think most people think of, when I say processing center, I do think most people are going to think of the mental, like therapy. Processing something means to make sense of something, which doesn't really fit in what I want our term to mean, right?
Yeah.
So my only qualm is that then you kind of have to define processing center to make sure people aren't confused by it. But, nothing's perfect. So, but I agree with that. We're leaving. Home base makes us uncomfortable. 369. We're doing a structured series of action steps or changes directed towards a specific intended result. And we're going back home to see if that result was met or made or whatever you would say there.
Yeah.
So
that may line up even more with, like, Schewee really wants to emphasize or she uses the term home base to describe your primary center. And so if you have that idea of, look, this is where I live at home, this is where I go to work, and then I come back home. And the working in that other space is in service of a different goal. The thing of the hexad, the numbers that are not 369, they are all going to work at home. They stay at home for work.
Work post-COVID.
Yeah, that's So for the rest of us, we just don't. It seems so natural to simply get what we need to meet our underlying feeling. So for me, I'm trying to address my anger, but I do that through action. So I'm not moving into using the primary resources and tools of other centers. I'm staying at home to address my underlying feeling. That's different for the three. The three has to go to work somewhere else. Describe how that works. You're going to work in service of meeting that underlying shame.
So again, we've just been talking about this for a week. So this is the rough draft of how I would say this. But shame makes me uncomfortable. Of course it does. Makes everybody uncomfortable. I don't like feeling uncomfortable. Of course I don't. Nobody likes feeling uncomfortable. The difference between me and twos and fours is that I'm going to leave if I'm uncomfortable. So instead of dealing with my shame or trying to get other people to see me and convince and show up in a way that makes me feel like I don't have it or I don't, whatever, would I trust a lot more is being able to construct myself into a person that I think would not need to feel shame. So if I can make myself into this character or a person or a trophy, then why would I need to feel shame, right? And I don't need to rely on people at all for that. I can do that. You know, I mean, I do because I'm looking for people still to tell me that it worked. But that's what it feels like, is I'm super uncomfortable with shame. I don't know how to solve that using relationships. I do know how to solve it by creating myself into someone that does not need to feel that shame.
Yep.
Through action and doing things that prove that I am a person worthy of not feeling shame.
Same thing works for nines then, who feel the uncomfort of the physical world, produces anger, control issues. In order to do business with this, they detach from their body and they move into their head space and they start doing the business of the head. How do I think through all of the things that I intuited, all of the other people's energies, seeing things from their perspective, addressing the conflicts that make me so uneasy there. I do that all in my mental life. And that mental processing is in service of the goal of shalom, of calm, of justice, as all the body types want. They want things to be physically holistic. Same process. Same process probably isn't the right word there. same movement. It's that
Same
movement of processing with the number associated with your stress move.
Yeah.
I like detachment still here though. You're
For
detaching
sure.
because the underlying feeling. So I'm going through Dr. Siegel's book right now. We're on chapter 3. By the way, if you want to look at this, find my episode on chapter 3, because he thinks the trenches of your brain, the very neural fabric of your, of your nervous system, this is where it all starts. It starts with your underlying feeling. I want to take it a step further and say you're taking in the world through one of your centers, and that's producing your underlying feeling. But he starts with underlying feeling and saying that we have evolutionarily constructed biological, responses to those underlying feelings, that one of them gets emphasized more than the others. Though we all experience that he has different language, but anger, shame, and fear. And that causes motive. And that's my intuition as well, is that motive comes out of that space. So how are you going to solve your problem, your experience of shame, your experience of anger, your experience of fear and anxiety? That's what Enneagram's going to show you through stance and processing center and affect. All of these are going to be ways that you're overcoming the primary problem, which is your underlying feeling.
Yeah. Great. I just want to add that on to the end. I felt weird about releasing our discussion, having now come to the conclusion that I do actually like processing center.
Yeah. So. I want to do one thing with assessment to land the plane for myself. I consistently talk about the Enneagram as kind of like a racetrack, and this works for me in terms of there's a starting line and you go around the track, but you always return to the beginning. Assessment is returning to the beginning. So what looks like for sixes, just to conclude with sixes, you're taking in the world primarily through your head center. That produces a future focus that has a tinge of underlying anxiety associated with it, because you never know what happens in the future. And that fear, anxiety can be kind of an overwhelming feeling for some of, I don't know what's going to happen. And that produces motive. So your motive kicks in as a 6. Now, because that anxiety can feel so uncomfortable, you detach from your head center. The anxiety can feel so uncomfortable that you're going to go somewhere else in order to solve the anxiety problem. And this is the move into processing. You begin to, your stance kicks in, and you start doing a lot of external work that is relationally focused in the heart center. So that external relational work is postured towards earning stability through others in that space. And there's an underlying belief from the 6 that if I just do enough, earning If I invest in these other people, they will meet me in my mental life, meet me in my physical needs, meet me in my emotional life. All of that is earned by the 6, but it's all in service to the different goal, which is appeasing one's sense of fear. And so assessment, are you good in the world, takes place when you come full circle, when you reassess, when you retake in the world. You retake in the world and say, did this all work? Are my anxieties resolved? Is the future a little bit more stable? So that's my thoughts on that. All right, this is Rewired. I'm Jeff Cook.
I'm Katie Whitlock.
Katie, we are still in When Working Together Doesn't Work by Joey Schewee. That's allowing us to jump into Processing Center, how each of the types assess. I've loved our first couple of episodes. In this one, I think we get to go for depth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the places, if you would like to dialogue about this episode, it's posted on our Patreon at aroundthecircle.org. Do go and comment. We would love your comments. Sign up for a free membership. You can comment on the episode that's there. We will interact with you. Good times there.
I think a lot of people, maybe this is just because I'm, Gen Z, but I think there is a lot of hesitation for people to comment on things. They're like, like I know when I comment on another creator's stuff, right? I'll be like, do I say this right? Like, are they going to want to know this? Like, they're the experts. Do they really care? Like, this is so embarrassing, all the things. Listen, y'all, okay? I get notifications every time we get a comment on our Patreon post. And that is like the highlight of my day. Even if someone's like, great episode, loved it. That's great. But also when people comment, especially if you disagree with something we said, those are my favorites because they're so interesting. Or when someone comments a story like, oh, you said this in the episode, I'm a 6. Let me tell you about how that happened to me. That is my favorite thing ever. So don't be afraid to leave comments. We love them.
I bet Katie has a happy dance.
Yeah.
Patreon comment.
I'm always
dance.
I'm in the coffee shop across the street from my house and I check all our comments every day because I always want to see them.
When I comment on other creators, so you will know this. I produce content for a living. I'm very verbose. I comment way too long because I've been listening to this person for 100 straight hours and finally got the courage to say something and it comes out way too long and they never respond. And then I feel bad about myself. This will not happen to you, dear listener. Go comment.
Yeah. Oh, okay. To be fair,
good.
I have sometimes Instagram doesn't like tell me when I get a message from people. Like if you're not following them, it'll go to your request folder. And then you have to go specifically look in your request folder. It does not notify you. So I got a message from somebody the other day and I opened it and I saw that she'd been messaging me since October of last year. And I had literally never responded. So first of all, please comment, but also sorry. I felt so bad. So anyway, if you feel like I'm ignoring you, I promise I'm not ignoring you. I just didn't know that you messaged me.
It's just in the spam folder.
That's like happened a couple times. Yeah. So if you feel like your message might be in the spam folder because I'm not responding, just send me an email or something.
So good. All right. Enneagram Sixes. This is the last chapter in Joey's book. And she tells us why. Just to start off with the first paragraph, which I think is worth talking about. She says, 6s are presented in the final chapter for a reason. As you have read up to this point, the types who misidentify themselves most are 6s, 3s, and 9s in that order. It's no surprise that the primary type would be the most prone to mistyping, being wired to shift away from your home base to process with a preferred center because you do not inherently trust your dominant center leads to very real imposter syndrome. If your filter, values, and fueling emotion are not linked to the center that you use to process, it makes sense that what follows would be an inability to believe that your success is tied to your intrinsic abilities, and you move through the centers faster than the 6 types whose stress and security moves are interconnected, leading you to see yourself in every type. There are 2 big things I want to talk about in this intro. One, she's describing the movement that we're going to spend a lot of time on. What is actually happening with 3s and 6s? They take in the world through their dominant center, but they're repressed in their dominant center. What's the story there? How does this work? What should we think about this? And she's also bringing up mistyping again. You got thoughts on this paragraph?
Well, the first thing I would say is and nines. She said 3s and 6s and 9s. Also move away from that center. What I have to say about the center is for all the things we're doing with Processing Center on these podcasts and kind of fleshing out some of Joey's language and maybe adding some things or saying, well, I would say this, I wouldn't say this. I do want to just reiterate, I think this is that is all nitpicky stuff to me. I think this is such an important theory because I see this in my classes, 3s, 6s, and 9s mistyping. 6s always think of themselves as feelers. So if I just present center of intelligence, no 6 is going to type themselves in the thinking center, right? They don't relate to fear. Sometimes I can get them to relate to like doubt and anxiety, but resource guarding, they don't really relate to because the resource they're guarding is relationships. So they want to put themselves in the heart center, all the things. 3s identify way more with action, right? Than anything else, right? We relate to wanting people to like us, but whatever. So I guess I'll just add, I have seen this in real life that these are the numbers that are mistyping. And the 9s just have the hardest time seeing themselves.
Right.
Right? Like they just don't know themselves. And so they just see themselves in every number. Of course they do. So agreed, I guess is what I would say. I agree.
I have a quick word on this. Brought something up in my heart, which I just wanted to say into a microphone about the ethics of typing and mistyping and talking with folks. Friends, you know this. Enneagram will expose things in you didn't know were there. And it may create spaces that are incredibly vulnerable. And if somebody actually does the work to get into Enneagram for a hot minute and says to themselves, I'm willing to open up those parts of my chest, especially in conversation where they're saying, here's what I identify with or where I type, I'm getting the sense, and this is just from spastic conversations just all over the place, that there has been a lot more judging of other people's type. Not those who don't know anything about the Enneagram, but those who do know things about the Enneagram and may have gone down the wrong path. And I suppose I want to say just to our collective listeners, be nice. This is not a place for gossip. This isn't a place for, this is a place for being generous with folks and asking probing conversations. And I suppose in my view, if somebody mistypes for a minute, if it's like, I can see how in certain atmospheres, like if you were doing a panel, you would want to do the hard work ahead of time to ensure that everybody was the type on that panel, or, in teaching settings that it can be tricky. But for the most part, I think I think we need to restate the ethic that you shouldn't type other people. That's not your job unless they're like asking you into those spaces, or unless you have like a real relationship with them where you can say, have you considered, like, why aren't you a 4? Why do you not see yourself as a 4? Or why don't you see yourself as a 7? I'm curious about that. That's one of those things that kind of hits me. You know what I mean there?
I do.
I don't know if that's a worthy way to think that. What do you think about that?
I have 2 thoughts about that. One, when you guys did that interview with Russ Hudson, was it just you or was TJ there? Was it just you?
TJ was there.
Yeah. So when you guys did that interview with Russ Hudson, a few months ago or whatever, there was this point, and I'm pretty sure this was in that episode. Maybe I was listening to him on something else, but there's this point where I think you asked him about mistyping, and you were like, do you tell people when they're mistyped? And Russ Hudson, like the modern father of the Enneagram, was like, no. And I remember I was running on the treadmill listening to that, and I was super shocked. I was like, really? Like, I know maybe you're not going to do it in front of everybody, but like, you don't tell people, Russ Hudson, when they're mistyped. And he just had this whole thing of like, it's not really my job. And he was like, I've done enough work with the Enneagram to know that like people can get what they need from a lot of different numbers. You know what I mean? And it's a journey. Like 6s have anger. So if they want to sit in 8 for a little bit and deal with their anger, whatever, sure, you can do that. And it was a big ego blow to me because I certainly at that point, probably still am sitting in the seat of like, you need to tell people if they're mistyped, right? So my first thought is like, if Russ Hudson of all people doesn't tell people that they're mistyped, then like, who am I to do that, right? Because he has done all of this for years. He has learned everything. He's forgotten more about the Enneagram than I have learned about the Enneagram, like stuff like that, right? So I want to say like his wisdom there I really value. And then this other one is just an observation I have, and I don't know where I land on this spectrum right now, so this is just a neutral thing I'm trying to say here. I think whether you think it's your job to type people comes from how you view the Enneagram. And I think there are two types of people who study the Enneagram. There are people who who believe that they are stewards of the Enneagram. And I have a duty to the Enneagram to see it correctly, to teach it correctly. You hear teachers talk about this all the time, right? Like we have a duty to the Enneagram to teach it well, to not do this trendy Instagram, what to buy a 9 for Christmas, like to avoid that kind of stuff, to really be a good steward of this knowledge, right? Versus, and a lot of times most people are kind of somewhere in the middle, but versus a people-centered focus of the Enneagram, which is, this is your journey. I'm here to help you through your journey. Let's talk about where you are. And I think if you are a people-centered person, it's much, much easier for you to let somebody wander through a lot of types. Whereas if you are a steward of the Enneagram, it's really hard, because if someone, gets up on a panel and thinks they're a 7 and is not a 7, and then somebody writes down what that person said and puts it in an Enneagram book, well, now there's misinformation out there, right? Quote unquote, about 7s. So of course you're going to feel really strongly about, we can't let this person continue walking around saying they're a 7 because they're doing it wrong, right? And so again, I think we need both of those. I actually don't I think probably the real answer is somewhere in the middle, but that is what I have seen in people, like the difference in people who super call out people for being mistyped, or people who are like, I would never tell someone they're mistyped. That's never my job. That is the difference I see in those. And I don't know how to reconcile those two things. Again, probably both are needed. One seems more macro to me. One seems more micro. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but
I do. One that I have a very strong temptation towards defending Enneagram orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And this may not be my best self. You and I, our numbers are going to be the most judgmental know-it-alls of all the types on the Enneagram, with maybe we can add the 5s, but they sometimes have a lot more restraint. See our Russ Hudson illustration earlier.
Right.
Nothing wrong with being a judgmental know-it-all. I actually like that position occasionally. I feel real comfortable there. So at least I'll identify that for myself, and I'll identify my wife in that space. So maybe I'm just judging Kelly is what it is. But the holding it loosely, being I'm not sure that there's an Enneagram orthodoxy yet. You and I are doing that work in trying to elevate the conversations that need to take place so that we can flesh out the ideas. And I think putting on your teacher hat for this season, for 99.9% of the people out there, being open-minded and flexible in conversation is probably the best posture.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think it's the case that I'm saying all this because it's a place that I generally struggle.
I agree with you.
I could probably do that.
I think, like you said, on a panel, like do your work to make sure all those people are really 7s, right?
Yeah.
If you write a book, make sure that you know that you were writing about someone who's really a 7.
Yes. When
we have like our weekend classes or whatever, we're not going to start interrogating people about whether they're really a 7, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't fit there. That's not helpful there. Like, you know what I mean? So I agree with you. It is super like situation dependent, and what are you using this information for, and all the things, right? Is the real purpose of this weekend class to build a community, right? Or is it to be correct in the Enneagram?
Right.
We know, because we're the ones that are putting it on. Our real thing is just to build community. Like, we want people to come and talk about the Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Hopefully they stick and realize that the screwdriver is upside down
Right.
and they just need to flip it over. It
Right.
works better.
Right.
And there
Yeah.
it is. Two of my favorite stories, two of my favorite people that we've had on the podcast mistyped for years.
Mm-hmm. I mistyped for years.
And these people were working with people in the Enneagram and were mistyped. And there's something about their story of honesty and humility and coming to things that, that's real life.
I guess the big thing I would say is, like, if we are saying that it may or may not be someone's job to tell you you're mistyped. And I am different from you. I do think sometimes you should tell people they're mistyped. But again, one, do it with grace. Like, it is valuable to have people who are going around and saying, hey, I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but I think you're mistyped, right? Because if we say that it's not someone else's job, then what that means is that people who study the Enneagram, for your whole life, you have to be open to the fact that you may be mistyped, right? Because what happens is people just find their type and then they never really open their brain back up to, like, think that maybe they are another type, So if we're saying that it's only your job to type yourself, and we're saying people can go decades typing themselves incorrectly, then you always have to be open to the fact that you might be mistyped.
Yeah.
Which is hard. That's really hard, right? So again, that also leaves room for, like, sure, it's okay for people to spend years in the wrong type. Do we the efficiency part of me is coming out. Like, do we want to let people spend their whole life? Like, I would want someone to tell me. If an Enneagram teacher...
I would too.
You know what I mean? I would want someone to tell me, hey, I think you're in the wrong type. But I would want them to tell me in a specific way.
So, I think that's it. I had a friend of mine who was an 8 and a 2. They thought I was a 5. They put forth that they thought I might be a 5, but they phrased it in a way that was, why do you think you're not a 5? This actually might be a great exercise. Like, if you are actually moderate to advanced in knowledge, asking, like, not saying, why do I think I'm a 1 or a 3, but saying, why am I not a 7 or an 8 or a 9? And giving the reasons why is actually a really helpful exercise.
Right.
Like, I have a lot of 8 attributes. I have a lot of 5 attributes. I have a lot of 3 attributes. Being able to say, this is why I don't type is this, I think, is a really helpful exercise.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, there you go. A little rant on typing. The last word?
No, I think that's it. I don't know if I have a final wrap-up sentence, but that's it.
For all of our love of efficiency, we do a great job being efficient on such matters. And here's 28 other things you
here's
should think
19 minutes on this.
Let's talk about the shift. We spent a little bit of time doing this with 3s. Not a ton of time, though, in terms of what's taking place, in terms of you taking the world through your center and yet pivot to a different center. When coming to 6s, how would you explain this to a 6 who's experiencing that?
So what's happening with 3, 6s, and 9s is that you are using the tools of your processing center, but you are using them in service of a different goal than the other 2 people in your processing center. So 3s, we saw that. We use tools of action and doing and performance and achievement, but it is all in service of relationship. It is not in service of action, right? It is not action for action's sake. It is action for relationship's sake. 6s, we're going to see the same thing. They are using relationship tools, relational tools, in service of not relationship, but of security. So that's what makes 6s different from 2s and 4s, is the end goal. The reason we're sitting here and feeling processing is different. 2s and 4s are going to have one reason for sitting there. 6s are going to have another reason for sitting there. 2s and 4s are sitting there in service of relationship and image crafting as well, I'd put in that. 2s and 4s are trying to figure out who they are, and that's why they're using feeling. 6s are trying to figure out if they are safe, and that's why they're using feeling. And then 9s, same thing, but we'll do that when we get there.
I'm going to frame this in the negative because so often I start with the shadow, but it's addressing the underlying feeling. In service of is such a great phrase here. The shift for the 6 is in service of alleviating their underlying feeling, which is their anxiety.
Yep.
And the 2 and 4 are not trying to alleviate anxiety. They're trying to alleviate their shame.
Yes.
But all 3 of them are doing it in that relational center with the relational assessment tools.
So, okay, I'm going to bring up something else that might distract us for maybe another 10 minutes, but this is a good time to bring it up. So we have talked about, Joey calls these processing centers. You have brought up the idea of assessment center. And when you first brought that up in the action podcast, I agreed with that. And I've been thinking about it. And I actually think I don't agree with that because 3s, 6s, and 9s, we brought that up because we said 3s assess through doing, right? But that's not past that. I'm assessing if, and did that make people like me?
3s, I would say it's the assessment triad. And I think you're assessing, are you good in the world based on accomplishments? Is how I would phrase it.
But
What do
I'm
you think about
not.
that?
I'm using accomplishment, and then I'm assessing on if I'm good. If everybody likes me, that means I'm good. If I was just assessing
Yes.
on accomplishment, I'd look a lot similar to 8s and 1s. So I'm not assessing through accomplishment. I'm assessing through, and again, maybe this is super nitpicky and just language stuff,
It's
but
not.
like
It's
I'm
important, actually.
assessing, I am just hoping that the action has made people like me. Assessment to me seems final, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding the word, but like if we're going to call something assessment in my brain, that means it's the last step. And we've said action is not the last step for 3s. We go back to heart. 6s, feeling is not the last step. They go back to the head. Am I secure? So I also don't like assessment center.
I think you are saying exactly what needs to be said. We've talked quite a bit about the movement out of your primary center into your processing center. We haven't talked about what it looks like to go back.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's taking place. You are going into that space to do things that will lead to achievements in the same way that 8s and 1s do. And that is the thing that's seeking to be fashioned. And then you go back to your heart with those items and say, does this fulfill my motive?
Yeah. But would that not mean that I'm assessing back in the heart center?
I think that you're feeling, well, it depends. Well, tell me.
I think I am. That's what it feels like to me.
Say it's the case that you have a really noteworthy goal in your mind, and you're going to spend 2 years working for this. When you get that goal, are you going to feel anything when you get it? Or will it take you going back to your people and hearing something from them?
I always
first?
think about like, would I do this in a vacuum? And the answer, and by that I mean where nobody could see it. And the answer is always no.
Okay. So you get the trophy.
I get the trophy once people have seen me do the thing.
You have zero feeling when the trophy is in hand.
I feel like people can see me with a trophy in my hand now. I mean,
Was it on stage?
Like, here's the thing.
What dress was I wearing?
If I didn't know the Enneagram, I would agree with you. I would say, yes, of course I feel lovely having the trophy in my hand. I love it. But because I know the Enneagram, what I really am happy about is that people can see me with a trophy in my hand. Right? That's maybe growth for 3 is just being happy that you have the trophy, right? And not needing people to see it. But I think the personality of 3 is you are much happier when people walk into your room of trophies versus just having the room of trophies. Who cares? I don't know who I am. So I walk into my room of trophies. This doesn't mean anything. The trophies themselves don't tell me that I'm a good person. The people's reaction to the trophies tell me that I'm a good person. So that is me assessing back in the heart center. And I would argue that same thing for sixes. Sixes get the relationship and then they say, do these relationships make me secure? That means they're assessing back in the head center. Right?
I think that's fair. I think that's a great claim.
Do you think that's not true? Like, do you see with Kelly, is she just happy to have the trophy?
I haven't asked. I haven't put it into, I think that you're rightly cutting apart what's taking place in the process. So let's turn. What if it's not assessing in that center for you?
I don't have any other word that I would call it, but I know that I don't like process. I don't love processing for some reason, and I don't like assessment. I just don't agree
all things
with assessment.
Processing would fail for the same reasons, yeah?
Well, okay, so walk me through why you said that. Because it actually makes me think
with
processing.
Emotions.
Yeah.
You're processing whether or not your goal was met.
Yeah.
Back in the heart center. That's not what's taking place in that move.
I feel like there needs to be another word that's like tools related. All that's happening is that you're picking up different tools than the other people in your center of intelligence. You know what I mean? So some verb that, or not whatever, some adjective that gets that idea across, that you are going to a different tool shop. You are walking across the street and you are going to a different tool shop, a different hardware store than the other people in your center of intelligence. Whatever that word is, that's the word I like.
Okay, so let me play out Joey's language, because I'm making it much more of a noun and she likes verbs.
Yeah.
So she likes processing with doing, feeling, and thinking. So in that space for the three, they're going into the body and doing things, coming back, and that's where assessment takes place, isn't it? So the movement into the body is much more about action than about...
That's why threes don't have the justice stuff, and they don't have the righteous stuff, and they don't care about how it gets done, because I don't live there, right? I just care about I just care about doing the stuff and then bringing it back home and showing people my trophy room. Right.
That's helpful. I could be wrong on this for sure.
So. I don't think you're wrong. I just think it's incomplete. I think it's not. And again, I'm just poking holes and then I don't have any tape to patch them up. So.
It seems like there's still a targeting of something like accomplishment. That's still not my favorite word for 831, but I do like ease for 5s, 7s, and 9s, and I do like connection for 2s, 4s, and 6s. They are targeting something in those spaces. The 3, 6s, and 9s just go hunting. They grab it and then they drag it home and
the hunting
enjoy
center.
it. The hunting center.
Oh, that doesn't work.
They're not getting their motive fulfilled by engaging their primary center. It's almost like it's like your external center. Like it's like, that's why people see threes as action people, because that's all people see. All people see us do is walking across the street and getting the tools. People don't see us in our house in the heart center assessing whether people like us or not. That's all inner motive stuff. So it's something about, I want a word that brings in the idea of these are the tools you're using. This is the thing that other people can see in you. So it's sort of like an external thing. I want a word that'll do all that. If anybody's listening and has a great word for us, would love to hear. Comment on the Patreon. So this would not be a verb. You're comfortable with doing, feeling, and thinking. That is what's taking place. When you go into the body, you're doing things in order.
Yeah.
And you are seeking a target in your doing. Maybe it's that, I mean, it doesn't have to be a center. Yeah, you're going there to gain your target. You're going there to gain your...
Yeah, but you are using the center for... Like if we say threes, your center of intelligence is the heart and your center is doing.
Maybe that's a misstep in terms of, like, I mean, I suppose I want to, so most of the third book, I just want to simplify things and say your heart, mind, and body really matter. And let's talk about how each of the types engage those centers, because all three of them have a relationship with all three centers. So for the 6 here, they are finding the target they desire most in a center that's just not primary. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is important enough though that I want a word. It seems big enough to me. Because I think it's a pattern. Like only 3, 6s, and 9s do this. It's not just that, oh, we all have a relationship with all the centers. Like, sure, but 3, 6s, 9s are doing something funny here. And I also think naming something doesn't automatically make it like the most important thing. You know, I don't know.
My mind is going towards something like a quarry or a bank. You're going somewhere that's not your home.
I think that lines up with my hardware store metaphor. You know what I mean? Like you're going somewhere that's yeah. It's like the tools in my house don't work. I have to go somewhere else to get the job done.
You gotta go to the hardware store.
Yeah, I gotta go get tools from somewhere else, or I gotta go to my friend's house and get the tools. The tools in my house don't work. Right? That's what I feel like as a 3.
Yeah.
If I want people to like me, I can't just use connection. Are you serious? I have to prove it.
Part of me wants to bust out a little bit even further into what might be happening. And we've had this discussion, but just to float it, like, it may not be the case that the doing is all the 3. Let me float this. I'm just going to not think through it. What if it's the case that you're not going to another center? What's really taking place is you're abandoning the heart for the other 2 centers and elevating them equally. It feels like you're focused on doing, but you're not. You're focused on doing and thinking. Both of these things are primary. Yeah. The accomplishment is actually mixed significantly with your very intelligent assessments and thoughts about what, quote unquote, what should get done. What the 9 is not only going into their head, they're actually going into their heads and their head and their emotions. The 6 is not only going into relationships, they're going into relationships with a very active energy. What if it's the case that it's not a single center? What if it's the case that what's taking place is a shutting down of your feeling center? And this would jive with a lot of my thought. I think everyone simply straddles 2 centers at one time. I don't think that you can engage all 3 centers at the same time. But I do think that you engage 2 centers. And
equally?
If you get really I think you can do it. Well, so it may be the case that it can be equally, or it might be the case that maybe this is how 3s, 6s, and 9s experience the way that the world actually feels for the rest of us who have a secondary center. Because I'm intuition first with feeling and as my secondary center. So I'm on that space, and that's kind of where I live. And maybe that's just what it feels like for everyone else. Like that they go into, like, if you think about the pivot, the primary becomes the body, but it is supported by thinking. I just don't think, I've said this a handful of times, but I just don't see 3s for the most part as not engaging their minds. 3s just almost uniformly look to me to be intelligent people.
Well, are you drawing a line between intelligence and the head center? Because that's a misstep.
Tell me why.
Because that implies that if you're not touching the thinking center, a 1, 2, or 6, then you're not intelligent.
I mean, they're engaging their head in that quick way, that productive thinking way. 3s don't have a problem with productive thinking.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good clarification.
So I'm really just thinking. I'm not quiet because I'm disagreeing. I'm just thinking. I think I think this idea of just leaving your home center for anything else as a 3, 6, or 9, I'll just grab onto anything, might have some weight. I'm having a hard time initially signing up on the fact that they are equal, that I have an equal footing in doing and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thing is, I would say if I signed up for that, I would have to think through that part, because nowhere else are they equal. So it would be weird. It would be different for 3, 6s, and 9s if it was equal. So I'd have to think about that. I guess I don't understand what you think was wrong with the original theory that we just went to one center. Like, just because we're having trouble naming it doesn't mean that it's wrong. So what made you say, actually, I think it's both? Actually, I don't think it's this big deal. I think you just got, like, why?
The idea that we're incorporating a mixture of 2 centers explains almost everything for me in the Enneagram, and I might as well add it to this.
Yeah. I think just because we want a pattern to be there doesn't convince me that it's there.
Discovery. It's how physics works.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a good thought experiment.
If it's the case, so this works for me for a coping style, for example, is like, I think you shut down your secondary center for the hexad numbers. This is how they problem solve. And for 3, 6s, and 9s, it's a doubling down on their repressed center. But in doing so, they are elevating the 2 other centers. So when you problem solve, you do engage your brain, or you do
as a
engage
3, you're saying?
your thinking. Yeah, as a 3. You do engage your thinking center, and you do engage action to problem solve. And your primary question is, what's the goal? But goals require thought. They require assessment. They require, okay, where are we going?
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not spastic action for action's sake. It would parallel something here, as it were. It might be the case that one of these is primary, but that's just the movement. But I think you're right in saying, okay, so assessment, it can't be the word.
Yeah. Yeah, because if our main motivation comes from our center of intelligence, then you're going to have to engage that center of intelligence to determine if that was met. So it does not make sense to assess through a different center.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a heart person, I have to assess whether my heart was met. So my heart's goal was met.
And yet all 3 of them, 1s, 8s, and 3s, are all assessing based on what they accomplished.
Well, no, but I'm not.
You're assessing based on what
people thought of what I accomplished.
Okay, yep. Nope, you're right. Okay, you got me there.
I don't know. Maybe we won't come up with a word today. Did all this come up because I said that I don't like both the words, and then didn't have another word for it?
I think it's important.
I'm kind of liking I don't know. Well, I like operating center a little bit, but I don't know. It's not hitting it for me. So
It's where you're doing your
it's where you're operating. It's where you're doing the business. Mm-hmm. I think we should call it doing the business center.
Yes, that's hear that, folks? Trademarked. Katie Whitlock 2026.
It's DTB DDB doing the business.
I'm getting
DDB
a tattoo on my back.
That is funny.
Have I showed you my tramp stamp?
No.
I actually have a friend. Look at you nod, who totally he got he got married, and he always wanted like that, for lack of a better term, like Latino calligraphy, and he got his wife's name tattooed on his lower back. And I'm sure now that I think about it, that he was probably a 7. That's the most 7-ish thing.
Yeah.
He's an English teacher. And somehow a picture got out, and it was very scandalous at the high school.
I would have been all over that. If we found a picture of my teacher, like one of my teachers in high school like that, that would have been crazy.
But of course, since he was probably a 7, I bet you he just loved the hell out of it.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And let me tell you a story.
Right.
Operating. It's that operating center. You're doing the business in your
It's the business center.
business center.
I don't know.
Well,
we'll think on this. If anybody has any thoughts, let us know.
Well, on the theory side, so the way that my mind comes to theory is I need kind of a picture in my head and heart that allows me to navigate, and that's just how I conceive of the world. But like, if you know music theory, you can have never, and this happens, you know, or something. And it could be any instrument. It could be an instrument that's never been seen before, you know, and it would still be the case that the sound waves work in a certain way. And I consistently think Enneagrams like that. And if you can like put your thumb on the laws, as it were, how the chord structures all work, then it just blows open. It doesn't matter who you talk to, in the same way that, you know, you can pick up an instrument you've never seen. This will work in the same way. If you talk to somebody you've never met before, this will work. And so finding those kind of, like, discovering the laws, as it were, is I think really helpful. One of the things that Schewee does that I do think is helpful here is she does a diagram in which, when you move the 3 into the body center, it all of a sudden lines up with 7 and 8 in a row. And so it's like the stances kind of come together. Yeah. I think that's really clever. And because it's clever, I want to give deference to maybe it is the case that center is a primary that is supported, as it were, by thinking, that the secondary center for the 3 would be thinking. I'm getting into 3s just because you're here, but the 6 would be similar, that your relationships, your relational center, the heart center, is supported by your doing. And that seems so clean for 6s. They are going to the heart, the relationships, for the treasure.
Well,
doing the business, and then going back.
Doing the business and then go back. That would also make sense.
The going back. This sounds dirty now that you're I was just here for the business. So like, anyway,
this would also make sense if, and again, I'm not signing off on this yet. I don't know how I feel about this theory, but if we say that 6s go over into feeling and then they're supported by doing, that would make that would make so much sense why they look so similar to 2s, because 2s are feeling supported by doing.
That's true.
3s, that makes sense why we look so similar to 8s in a lot of ways, because if we are switching like that, now I am doing supported by thinking.
Yeah.
But our ultimate goals are still different. Again, I don't know. Something in me is not thinking that that's correct, but I don't know what it is yet. So maybe we can talk about it on a different podcast, but when I have time to think about it.
I think the reason this matters to voice it for 3, 6s, and 9s is you take in the world through your primary center. Let me just talk about 6s. 6s take in the world through their head. In doing so, it causes them to have a future focus, and the future focus elevates the underlying feeling of anxiety. That move produces motive, because that's an uncomfortable space, and you begin to want things. And the primary things that you want are going to be slightly tinged with that feeling of anxiety and future reference. And so for the 6, their stance is reactive. So their energy is going to be out front and external. And they're going to assess the world there, process there. They're going to think about they're going to experience what they want in that external space. And that is also the space of earning. That's the space of reactiveness to the world. and how am I going to get what I want? When the stance kicks in, they find themselves in the relational center.
Mm-hmm.
That is where at some point they move off of, we kind of said this before, like for 3 6s and 9s, their primary center is uncomfortable, even though it produces their motive and what needs to be satisfied.
That's interesting because that sets up the question of which one is deeper, stance or, well, I mean, motive is deep, but like maybe 3s have to move away from feeling because I'm in the independent stance, right? And I can't feel good in the independent stance if I'm in feeling. So I have to run away from feeling, to get my stance requirements met. And that brings up an interesting question of, again, like chicken or egg, like which.
I think the center is I think it actually is at first. The center is first because it's going to be the filter through which you're taking in the world. Say it's the case that 3 6s and 9s feel really uncomfortable when the world hits them.
Yeah.
Shame, fear, control.
I guess
Shame,
that's
fear,
true. I
and
agree.
anger.
I agree. Center of intelligence always comes first. So maybe it's the processing center or operating center or whatever we're calling it. Maybe that's also kind of a direct result of your stance as well. Because if I'm a 3, but I'm an independent, my independent requires me to run away from feeling. And so I have to pick something else. I don't know. Or maybe I'm in the independent stance because I don't like feeling. And so I ran away from it. And that makes me independent. I don't know. That would be interesting to think about.
This is interesting because, of course, 3 6s and 9s are all going to have different stances.
Yeah. Yeah. So 9s, they can't be doing oppressed in the doing center. They have to leave. But did they leave and that made them withdrawn? Or did they leave because they're withdrawn?
You know what it is it's defined by the move to repress. All of them all 3 6s and 9s all repress their primary center.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that defines the stance.
Well,
so if
maybe. Why are you saying it's necessarily that way? Why don't I have a stance first? I want to be independent in the world. And so I'll abandon feeling. Why not that?
Because you're at the center of the heart triad.
So it doesn't make... You're saying it would have to take something...
Why would that happen? Let me think about that. Why is it the case that 3 6s and 9s all suppress their primary center?
Yeah, like why do that in the first place?
Okay. The other thing, let me play this out. The other thing that 3 6s and 9s share is, ooh, this can be good.
We're all over the place today.
It's your affect. Your affect is that you're an attachment type.
Yeah.
And if something makes you feel uncomfortable, guess what you do?
But why does it make me uncomfortable?
But if anything makes you feel, if something makes the 3, 6, or 9 uncomfortable.
Right, but why would the feeling center make me uncomfortable? I'm a feeling center person.
Because the shame feeling emerges. This is exactly the answer, by the way. This is fantastic. This is the answer. The shame makes you feel uncomfortable and you move off it.
Oh, and so other numbers don't move off of their center because
Correct.
They are not built to detach from things when they make them uncomfortable.
That's how it works. 3 6s and 9s all detach. And the move toward this really works. The move to detach from your center is just an expression of the exact same kind of detachment 3 6s and 9s experience. When that person isn't safe, 6 detaches. When that person's too chaotic, 9 detaches. When that person is oily, smelly, and makes me look bad, see you, pal.
Okay.
That's
I'd want to
exactly
run
what
through
it
the other
is.
ones too, and I'd want you to explain to me why the other numbers, like how if our what's that grouping called? The affect
These
group.
are the affect groups.
If affect group is showing up in 3, 6, and 9, then it must be showing up in the other numbers too. It just doesn't cause you to jump off of your center.
Yeah, it's how does your affect relate to your underlying feeling? That would be the question. Okay, so for me, so let's just do idealist. So for ones in response to, it's their direction of energy is what it's going to be. Your direction of energy in trying to solve the underlying feeling is what happens. I get idealistic.
You get angry at yourself.
Yeah. And so my anger moves inward, and I have ideals for myself in order to solve the anger problem. The 7 gets idealistic in their thinking, and the 4 gets idealistic in their feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inward
But they're choosing to use that same
move.
Center. They're not built to
Yes.
jump and look for another center. You have to stay where you are.
They didn't detach.
Yeah.
They are solving the problem internally in their center.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
twos,
relationists.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You're better at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the relationists are 2s, 5s, and 8s. The problem is external to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Which is true. Because their emotions all go outward. No, they don't. 5s don't. And 7s, that...
5's fear goes outward, and then they withdraw to get away from the thing that causes them anxiety. And the 7 fears has anxiety within themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And it
stupid.
pushes them outward.
Yeah.
By the way, this, of all things, the book, that Dr. Siegel book, he doesn't understand that. And he flips it in the book. But in my view, that's what's taking place. It also makes it much more uniform. You get all the triangles and stuff. But what the 2, 5s, 8s are going to solve the problem outside themselves by putting up a wall that nobody else can see. And then you address the anger, the fear, the shame through how you engage the world out there.
Wow. You're very smart.
Stop it.
That's really good.
Does that work for you, though?
Yes. Yes, it does. I still want to put this on paper and like order all the things, like but yes, that does work for me. So basically what we're saying is like affect group is like one of the most important things about you. It would be like top 3 things.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's core.
It's like center of intelligence, stance, and affect group are like your things.
I mean, not to say that we structured our book like that originally, but I couldn't do enough on, what's going to actually happen with affect groups, I'm spending the 4th book all on affect groups. So our first book was mostly centers and stance, but when you bring in affect, you bring in relationships and how you relate to everything. So Daniels, Palmer, both of them think that affect is what's primary. Part of this is because they're psychologists, and there's actually been a lot of study on this front. So I want to say it's called object relation theory, but it goes into those triads. It wants to elevate 3 primary feelings of frustration, detachment, and rejection as early childhood experiences of how you deal with a caregiver.
Well, and now that makes Enneagram more, what's it called when something has merit?
Yeah, it's validated.
More validated to me. Yes. Because if we're starting in an established scientific theory, then...
Yep.
Wow. You guys.
Well, of all things, that's where... So the book that we're going through on the reading room, the Dr. Siegel book, that's where he lands. Yeah. He doesn't touch stance at all. You and I elevate stance a lot because we come out of the Stabile school, but as we kind of, I think, have talked about a handful of times, I think she may have been the one who's really discovered this and moved into it. Aside from the stuff that comes out of, but Siegel, just call it the Berkeley School, Daniels, Siegel, all the stuff going on in California. Those guys focused on affect groups, the centers, and subtypes. And then they really pushed into the sins. And like that, pretty much Enneagram outside of the Stabile school feels like it feels like it's that stuff.
Remember 45 minutes ago when I said I have another question that'll distract us for 10 minutes?
Yes, let's go there.
No, that was, and then we just got distracted for an hour. Oh. Hopefully all of that was helpful to you if you are a 6. And I think it's very fitting that all of the thinking out loud we're doing is on the 6 episode.
Yeah. So anytime I'm talking about 6s, my brain like conforms to that way of being in the world. I start thinking like a 6 for some reason when I'm talking about 6s. So I'm overly empathetic. All right, this is Rewired. I'm Jeff Cook. That's what. See.
I don't know why that made me that. This is so stupid. I'm Katie Whitlock.
I'll redo that. Although if that was really funny, I'll keep it.
Somebody told me that if you look closely, you can see the color of another man's soul.
Hey friends, it's Jeff. We're getting to interview some of the most intriguing people in the Enneagram world. There are already 20 plus interviews up at aroundthecircle.org, and we're continuing to add more. That site is where we're gathering and platforming all of our best work. Much of it is available for free. Katie Whitlock and I have been doing deep studies working through wings, stance, fear, anger, and shame in our Rewired series. I'm beginning to release chapters from my next Enneagram book, which I'm calling The Steps, for early review for your consideration. And we have monthly online workshops in which 30 or so folks gather to talk about their type. There's audiobooks, there's videos, there's lots of fun stuff, lots to like. Go to aroundthecircle.org, and may all good things be yours.